This is a high-level group of seniors in a Humanities of the Western World class, and they have an exam in a couple of weeks where they're going to be connecting everything that we've been talking about so far to some new, fresh texts. And they deal with those new texts on the day of the exam. And they haven't taken a test like this before, and so they're nervous about it. And so I give them a couple of weeks before an opportunity to practice that. And I give them a passage, a new passage they haven't seen before. They take it home and work through some of those connections, and then come back and we process it today in order for them to relax a little bit and get some practice for what the test is going to look like next week or in a couple of weeks. So that was really the purpose of the lesson. But the lesson that I taught today could work with any kind of close reading for a chunk of text, 300 to 400 words or so, which is what I had them do for today. Yeah, I say it's time for, you say connections. Time for? Connections. Time for? Connections. Because it's all about the connections, right? So let's do that first. If you got one, please stand and deliver. All right, any other connections today?
Yeah, I just thought of this. My parents don't often watch TV together, but they were last night, and they were discussing if they wanted to watch Arrested Development or Breaking Bad. And there was sort of a discussion of like what mood they both wanted to be given by what would be on screen. Mm-hmm. And I was sort of, that brought up ideas of like Plato and the idea of like, instead of just ignoring art completely with emotional connection, like having the opportunity to choose what kind of emotion you want to feel and then having that given to you.
What did they choose?
I don't know, I didn't care about
that. You're waiting for the end of the story.
So I had like a duality thing kind of going on. Okay. I do track and field, and so usually, like right now, like I'm like fully covered and stuff like that. So I always have like friends come up to me and ask me like, oh, like, do you wear like a skirt? And I'm like, I do hurdles. I don't think that would work out too well. Like I bust my teeth type of thing. And so like I realized like I have a duality with like my Somali side, and then like being born here and wanting to be like more modern side.
You're in it, no question. So first thing I want to do is take about 2 or 3 minutes and just chat with a neighbor, just whoever you're seated next to, about what connections you found, share out a little bit, and see kind of how it went. What'd you struggle with? What'd you see? What are you proud of? So about 2 minutes. Go ahead and start.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it's what
yeah, I know, but I just want to make sure.
Well, did you read the passage?
No, I just stopped.
It's 5 minutes you read.
Oh, I thought you, okay.
So it's from...
I say curse of the, you say grandfather. Curse of the...
Grandfather.
Curse of the...
Grandfather.
Yeah. That's not funny. Why are you laughing? All right. Next thing I'd like to do is take a couple minutes and have a few of you stand and share connections. But I'm going to pick who's going to share by chair color. So hopefully I got a good one. We'll just take the top 2 on the oracle today. I got red and blue. So if you are in a red or blue desk, please go ahead and stand up.
One connection I made was the second paragraph on the left side. It says, his words cause so much anxiety, and every time he's happy, he keeps on remembering them, and I felt like that could be related to the oracle in Oedipus Rex, because every time he's happy, he doesn't specifically say, oh, remember that time? Well, he does sometimes actually say that, but he's always thinking about like the oracle and his fate, even in the happiest times.
I have an example of duality. I compared the grandfather to Hector, because they're both family men, but they have a side that their family doesn't really get to see. For the grandfather is the story he was telling about him being a traitor, and for Hector it's him being a warrior.
Good. All right.
Helen's.
And if I had to connect it to a dichotomy, I would probably go for seeing versus blindness, but not in the classical sense. There's sort of, with Pellinor and also Merlin, there's sort of this question as to whether they're wise or just kind of old and senile.
Yeah.
And that's similar with the grandfather. He's talking and he says all this stuff that, you know, you really could consider wise advice or wise commentary, but the family sort of like, don't listen to what he said. He's just a dying old man.
Uh-huh.
So there's that sort of like seeing versus blindness in terms of like whether or not it's, you know, wise or senile.
I pulled an excerpt from Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, a 20th century novel by an African-American author. It is a text we're going to read later in the curriculum. So my choice of that was twofold. One, I want to plant a seed in these students already with this particular text because it's one that's going to need time to grow and germinate because it's a massive text there later in the curriculum. So to have them already thinking about it a little bit at this point is fantastic. I also chose that particular text because it's got some good things for them to connect to. And so already they can see that the works we've been reading by the dead white guys like Homer and Sophocles and Plato have some relevance with a 20th century black author. Live with your head in the lion's mouth. I want you to overcome him with yeses, undermine him with grins, agree him to death and destruction, let him swallow you till they vomit or bust wide open.
They thought the old man had gone out of his mind. He had been the meekest of men. The younger children were rushed from the room, the shades drawn, and the flame of the lamp turned so low that it sputtered on the wick like the old man's breathing. "Learn it to the young'uns," he whispered fiercely. Then he died. But my folks were more alarmed over his last words than over his dying. It was as though he had not died at all. His words caused so much anxiety. I was warned emphatically to forget what he had said, and, indeed, this is the first time it has been mentioned outside the family circle. It had a tremendous effect upon me, however.
I could never be sure of what he meant. Grandfather had been a quiet old man who never made any trouble. Yet on his deathbed, he had called himself a traitor and a spy, and he had spoken of his meekness as a dangerous activity. It became a constant puzzle which lay unanswered in the back of my mind. And whenever things went well for me, I remembered my grandfather and felt guilty and uncomfortable. It was as though I was advice in spite of myself. And to make it worse, everyone loved me for it. I was praised by the most lowly white men of the town.
Okay, next thing we're going to do is a little pairing up activity where I'm going to have you make a silent appointment with one of your classmates. When the two of you get together, you're going to take a look at your responses. So you need to bring your sheet with you, your response, and look them over and kind of decide which one's a little bit better than the other one. Okay, it's not about who wins. What I want to do is kind of filter up a few of the really good responses in the room. So everybody on your feet. Make eye contact with the partner. As soon as you have one, sit back down. Okay. All right, very good. Okay, go find your partner and start reading through and kind of decide which one's a little bit better than the other.
I just felt like mine was better here. Yeah, some really good
anyone that I wrote down that I shared how he had like a side that he has a side to take up
Like when you go out to campus, he's not comfortable at all, but he can't think of anything. Yeah.
I had very first one the narrative.
Alright, I say shark bait, you say ooh-ha-ha, shark bait. Ooh-ha! Yeah, that one's solid. Okay, I'm headed around a marker, take the next couple of minutes, decide which one you think is a little bit better than the other, and that one's just going to get a plus on it. So take it about a minute and make that decision and give one a plus, and then the other stays blank. But I came back ready to enter into that, but not knowing quite what to do. And it's like, I want to build the house, I don't have any tools. And having that deep desire to do better by my students of color for all kinds of reasons. Because I started to see how hard it was for them to be in a predominantly white school and have a voice, to be able to say what they're thinking. I even had one student tell me in a conversation that we had in class about why didn't the kids of color bring up the issue of race when that was really clearly the issue to be brought up. And one of the students came up to me and said, it's too hard. A sweet Ethiopian child, a beautiful young woman, came up to me at the end of class and said, I wanted to talk about race, but it's too hard. And I realized, this is some years ago, as a professional, I need to figure out how to create a safety in the room where the kids of color have a voice and aren't uncomfortable bringing up those issues. But I wasn't equipped. I didn't know how to do that. And so when I first got to hear you speak at St. Mary's about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I realized this guy's got tools.